Josh is also the musical director. He does a great job. I think he does. Yeah. Josh is also the musical director.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the ISSA-LA July 2021 virtual chapter meeting. We're glad to have you here, and it's definitely some interesting times here, given what's happening here with the new Delta variant that's popping back here. So we hope that everyone is staying safe, everyone's taking necessary precautions. We hope everyone in your family is doing well. And for those of you who are seeking out the jab, we hope you're being able to get the jab. We have some great program today with our great speakers here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joshua Chin, or Josh Chin. I'm not the very, very handsome and good-looking Richard Greenberg. Unfortunately, Richard is out this week. But I have the pleasure of being your MC tonight and hosting tonight's meeting. Before we go to our featured speakers, and I know you guys don't want to hear me talk, just some quick house business to quickly get out of the way here. Of course, we have our chapter board here that I have been diligently serving you for the last year. So thank you to everyone here on the list, Richard, Dave, Serafino, Gary, Katie, Mike, Mark, and Chad for continuing to help drive our community forward during these really, really crazy times. So thank you to everyone on that. Some upcoming events in July 27th. We actually have not one, but two supply chain workshops, thanks to Cyberbit. You can go to our website, ISSA-LA.org, and go ahead and register. You just need to register for one, but both workshops are exactly identical. So please do take a few moments if you're interested to take a look at our supply chain workshops. Thank you to Cyberbit for sponsoring that and hosting that. Next meeting, please save the date, August 18th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. back here on YouTube. We'll be looking at Through the Eyes of the Thief will be our next major topic for the month. So please go ahead and save the date. For those of you who actually would also like to register, registration is open on Eventbrite. So go ahead and throw your name in there. We'd love to have a huge turnout for that event as well. Big news, huge news. We're back in person, not quite yet with a full meeting, but we are doing a happy hour. We'll be at the Islands Restaurant at Westchester at the Promenade at the Howard Hughes Center, August 31st, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. So please go ahead and register. I believe the cost is $10. You get a free drink ticket, and we will be ordering some snacks and hors d'oeuvres for everyone there. So by all means, please register. We'd love to see everyone back. And in person, please do wear a mask due to current county mandates. But other than that, we intend to start re-emerging and start holding in-person events. So we'd love to see you. Please do come out for the real event. Last but not least, our next major event is going to be a virtual lunch meeting. Not our normal virtual dinner meetings, but we'll be doing a virtual lunch meeting on September 15th at 11:45 a.m. Again, registration is already open on Eventbrite, so go ahead on there to ISSA-LA.org and go ahead and take a look and reserve your spot. We'll be having Chris Cleary from the Department of Navy, and he's the Chief Principal Cyber Advisor who will be presenting as well. If you haven't known as well, we are on social media. So by all means, go find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Of course, you're watching this on YouTube. So go ahead and hit subscribe to our channel, like it in case you miss one of our events and forget to register. We're always here on YouTube during the duration of our virtual events. We're also on LinkedIn and Meetup. And of course, if you get interested, we also have a Discord community as well. So please do come join us if you're interested as well. If you got questions for our speaker today, we're back on Slido as well. Go ahead and go to app.sli.do and just type in the event code ISSA-LA, and you can ask questions of our speakers. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to our amazing presenters today. They'll be talking about knowing your data risks, pragmatic approaches to automate data discovery and classification via next-gen AI. And so I have the distinct honor and pleasure of introducing, I apologize to at least one of the speakers. I'm still trying to get their name, Vaibhav and Prashant. So please take it away, gentlemen.
All right. Prashant, okay. All right. Can you see?
Yeah, yes, I can see it. Thanks, Joshua. This is Vaibhav. I'm the CEO of Security, and I have with me Prashant Sharma. He's the CTO of Security. Today, we'll be talking about on the topic, as Joshua mentioned, knowing your data risk and how you can build workflows, defining how you can do data discovery and classification around that, and building privacy compliance workflows around it. So we'll be talking about initially in the first half, we'll be talking about what are the requirements, why you need data discovery, why it is so critical, and how AI comes into the picture in defining some of those complex workflows, in finding that sensitive data, and then classify the data for some of your DSR requirements to be privacy compliant with global privacy laws. Prashant, next slide. So as we talked about just now, that we'll be talking initially about the privacy laws, what are the requirements, and then we'll go into that. So the best way is to what is data privacy and where it is going. So if you look at it at the global landscape, what we are seeing is today there are over 100 countries which have privacy laws. And we are aware of it, like the prominent ones are GDPR, CCP, and various other privacy laws. And as we see every few months, a new privacy law is coming in. So if we talk about in US, you have over 18 states which are discussing about passing a privacy law. And if we go back recently, so Colorado, just a few weeks back, they passed a privacy law. Virginia passed it. And now just news came in that Ohio is looking to implementing a privacy law. So with that complexity, what we are seeing is now businesses have to comply with different privacy laws, and it's a big issue. And one of the fundamental right is how to find this sensitive data and how do we comply with that when a business has to comply with 10, 20, 30 privacy laws. And in tandem with that, what we are seeing is you already have breach notification laws when we talk about it in US, right? Every state has. Now, if a breach happens, what happens is what we are seeing most of the time is your data gets breached and your breach notification laws get kicked in, which goes in conjunction with privacy laws. And we are seeing more and more. Let me take an example here, like Illinois. Illinois has a biometric privacy law. They have a privacy law, PIPA, and then they have a SOPA, which talks about children's privacy law, how the public schools have to maintain privacy law. Just imagine how complex it is for a business to maintain all these privacy laws and go about it. Next. So we touched upon all these different privacy laws. So I want to touch upon, because we are doing a talk today in California about CCPA. So what CCPA requirements are today, right? If you just think about it, a lot of organizations, when we talk and discuss about it, they think that, okay, if a business is in California, then only we need to comply with CCPA privacy law. It's just not about that. The scope is much bigger than that. Say if you are an organization operating in, say, in Washington, right? But you're storing sensitive data of California citizens, you still need to be CCPA compliant. And that's what I was talking about. Like if you're storing Brazil residents or Canadian residents information, or say European residents, right? You need to comply with multiple privacy laws, and that's make it complex. So particularly in CCPA, you have very specific requirements when you talk about or how you can get compliant or which organizations needs to comply and what are their requirements. So if you are a business with 25 million in revenue, or you're storing a 50K consumers, households, or devices information, or you are making half of your revenue by selling consumers information, either one of these criteria you fall under, you need to be CCPA compliant. And it's just not about when we say CPA compliant, you need to have different privacy workflows. And the fundamental thing is at the end of it, you need to have data inventory, you need to have data mapping, and find that sensitive data to fulfill the DSR requirements. Next. Now let's talk about it. Like I briefly touched upon different privacy laws, what complexity they bring in when you have multiple privacy laws you need to comply with. The fundamental thing with that is the journey starts with how do I find this data? And the complexity comes with, if we see the trend in last few years, like say 10 years back, we used to have data all stored locally and on-prem, maybe in databases and network shares, and that's it. So there's a big shift in last 5 years on the cloud side, and especially with pandemic kicking in. So we have seen a drastic change in last 1 year or so, where a lot of data has moved into the cloud, and especially unstructured data when we talk about it. And today, if you think about it, roughly 80 to 85% data is unstructured data, which is sitting in the cloud. And a lot of companies can't control that. It's not within their network. So finding that data, which is being stored in the cloud apps, databases, your network shares, and that data is just not a simple data. It can be a FedEx slip. It can be in your ticketing systems. It can be in your chatting systems or your social media, right? You have data all over the place. And that's what I was talking about. Like if you think of an MRI scan, right? If you go to a hospital and basically the doctor recommend you and they don't know where the issue is, they want to have an MRI scan. So think from that perspective, they want to have a full scan and then they can take a better judgment. And that's what we are talking about here. The companies don't know where to find that data. And that's where you need to have a sensitive data inventory and data mapping so that you can take better actions and then you can get compliant for different requirements. Next. So what are some of those things when you do like data discovery, data classification, and so on, right? What are the requirements when we talk about in the privacy world, right? So basically, we are looking for some of the key aspects, like what is the purpose of the data? So when you find that data, right, when you talk about like your unstructured, semi-structured, and structured data, what is the purpose of that data? When I say purpose of the data, whether it is used for HR purpose or for your engineering purpose, what kind of data? Or your data minimization strategy, for how long you want to keep that data. And when you keep that data, when you plan to delete that data and so on. Or your data retention, which goes with minimization strategy. Now, when we talk about data lineage and sensitivity, we are talking about where your data generated, it started its journey, how it moved from one source to another source. You need to keep a data lineage so that tomorrow, if some privacy issue happens or a data breach happens, you need to understand who had access to that data, in what systems, and how it was managed. So you need to have an understanding of the data to comply with privacy laws. And the lastly is residency. So we heard about Schrems 2 last year, and there's a big talk going on about the cross-border data transfer and the data localization things, right? So now companies are worried, and some of the countries are saying that the data cannot move out of their own country. And just let me give you a recent example that in India, MasterCard came in and they wanted to distribute their cards, and India blocked MasterCard to distribute new cards because of the data localization issues. And what they said basically is, unless the data is stored locally within the country, right, you cannot issue that. But the MasterCard servers were sitting outside the country. So these are some challenges around privacy that are there from data classification. So data classification comes from that perspective. When you have an effective data discovery and when you can do using artificial intelligence and machine learning, and then you can classify that data, and you can tell that where the data is being stored and so on, right? You have better efficacy around it. Next. So when we talk about these privacy laws, about the data discovery and data classification, the, the next level of that, if we think about it, right, the CISOs and privacy officers, they think about like from data security, right? If this can help in knowing the data, what kind of data is there, who is accessing that, that becomes a bigger problem. It's also ties to a security issue. So from the data security standpoint, if you think about it, like who is collecting that data, for how long you are keeping that data. Say tomorrow if a breach happens in an organization, right? And if a breach happens, so how do you are handling that data? If you would have deleted a lot of that duplicate data or the old data, that is the stale data, you could have minimized that issue. Some of these challenges, how the data is changing over a period of time, that is called a data anomaly around it. So if you can handle some of these issues with your data discovery and classification, that will help your cybersecurity program to have better controls around it. So that's where data security comes in at a very high level in conjunction with your data discovery and data classification. Next. So now, like we discussed about the data privacy laws, we talked about your data discovery and data classification and how it impacts the data security side of things in a very brief way. So we'll be going into more how AI and machine learning can help you in defining and understanding your data so that you can take better actions around that and be privacy compliant. So I give it over to Prashant. So he'll be talking more on that side. Prashant?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Vaibhav. So I'm going to thank you everyone for spending your evening with us and listening about data privacy. Hopefully we are able to help you out with some of the new changes which have happened in technology side, which can automate some of your workflow tasks, make your life a little bit easier. The way I have structured the rest of the talks, we're going to talk about the problem, like why is this a problem now, why we haven't paid attention to it. We'll go through some of the recent development and changes which have happened in AI and ML, which can help, and how like you can take some of these ideas and either implement yourself, or you can look at the existing solutions in the market and evaluate them better. So hopefully I can help you with some of these approaches. So since COVID, I think we all have accelerated the data movement to the cloud. So 1 zettabyte is like 1 followed by 21 zeros. That's the what we are looking at. Now what has happened is in today's world, because the cost of storage is pretty low, um, and the companies don't want to lose customer touch and contact. So that makes life of the data governance team, the privacy team, and the security team pretty hard, because now I can take an appointment for, let's say, my hospital through a WhatsApp message or email or chatting mechanisms. I have multiple touch points, and a lot of these touch points are having privacy or sensitive information, right? So besides this, this is like I'm interacting with the business, right, through some medium. Then there is a lot of machine data which is generated. So we have like all these devices in our house, and these devices are constantly generating some kind of data over our activities, and it's being collected somewhere, whether this is from your garage door opener or your Tesla car, and it is basically telling about your behavior. We have geolocation coordinates along with this data, so we know where the car is. um, we have different Twitter feeds we browse through in our browser, which is being collected. So all of this is basically lead to a lot of data volume, which was not there before. The first thing which comes to a company's mind is, how do I make financial sense of this data so I can, better engage with my customer and, do some revenue generation. So that's the first thing which comes to their mind. Privacy and security is probably bottom down the list. And that's a problem because if we don't know how to make sense of this data, how do you govern it? How do you make it secure? So that's the challenge we are looking at. You'll see some numbers here, like the SMEs are taking 172 hours to fulfill personal data request. And for large organizations, this is much longer. There are a few more articles which have come out. These numbers have been updated, and I think we have much better breakdown in terms of verticals. Like healthcare data is more spread out, so healthcare teams typically take longer. um, if you are maybe in a marketing business or something, so marketing businesses rely a lot more on tooling, so it's easier for them to fulfill personal data requests. Personal data requests are nothing but I can go to a company and say, hey, can you delete all the data you have on me, or I want to opt out of these use cases, right? You cannot use my data for these purposes. So that's what it is about. But essentially the point I'm trying to raise here is we are still taking a large amount of time to fulfill this privacy data request. And with the volume increasing, it's not going to slow down, right? We are going to take more and more time. So how do we solve this? How do we tackle this problem, right? So why I want to touch upon a little bit, like why is this a hard problem? Don't we have tools around to figure out where my data is stored, right? So think about like a customer touch point, like in Salesforce kind of a system, or your email, just to be very simple. So you have data in kind of like a mixed mode where you have some textual data, you have image related data. So you can have your FedEx, like you go to a retailer and say that, hey, I want to return my device, and they give you an RMA receipt, and the RMA receipt has your address. Um, we have personal data in like Slack messages. Let's say your customer support is using Slack, then you have personal data in Slack present. Emails already have personal information, especially with employees. We have resumes floating around everywhere. So we are looking at a world where data is kind of like not structured. Some of it is structured, some of it is not, and it's stored across different systems. The current applications lack the capability to correlate and find whose data it is. Okay, they can tell you that there are applications which can tell you that, hey, this is a credit card number, or this is a phone number. But what these applications lack is whose data it is, and can they tie around all the pieces together. So because we are using like multiple tools and things keep on changing, like today your marketing team is using HubSpot, tomorrow they might go to Marketo and start collecting new sets of data, but you still have old data lying around. It's moving very rapidly, and the security, privacy, governance, compliance, all these teams are kind of struggling because we lack tooling. Okay. The second problem with the collecting all this data is what is commonly known as a data drift. So data drift is nothing. It's basically like I start collecting new data, and after some point of time, either I delete some old attributes, I add new attributes which have new kind of information, or my marketing team says, okay, I was doing what is very common is like A/B testing. So I was collecting this kind of sensitive information. I want to change this. I want to collect new kind of sensitive information. So you're looking at data drift. So data which is changing constantly over time and in nature. So this is why it is not that straightforward to find data, whose data it is, and classify it correctly. So is there now looking at the size and the scope of the problem, right? How are we handling this today? Okay. So typically in the earlier days, the data discovery, how it is like people are storing data in their SQL database. I have one database which has all the customer information, easy for me. I can query that. If the customer says delete my data, I can do it. Now, since the volume has exploded, we're looking at different kind of stores. So we are looking at graph stores, we are looking at document stores to store my like Twitter feeds or Slack messages. You can have other like a key value store or a column family to, based on the use case, you can drive your analytics use cases out of this. AWS is selling like multiple kinds of databases, same for Azure and GCP, right? So what this what you need essentially is kind of like what I'm showing in a map here. Like you need as a security or privacy or governance or compliance, you kind of need a privacy map where you can go to each data source and see what's going on, right? What kind of data I'm collecting, are they correlated? So this is what you need, but these tools, they lack it today. So either you have to do something on your own, or you have to basically hire a team who can implement this solution, maintain it over a period of time. Also, what is happening is earlier, like in the privacy world, like you have to create like these PIA assessments. It's kind of like reporting where you say that, okay, this is our process, this is how we are collecting data, how we are storing it. The problem with that approach is it's a survey based approach. It depends on somebody's memory that this is the kind of data I'm collecting. If they forget, then you lose that. Also, the data is not fixed today. It's not static. It's always dynamic. We are collecting more and more, and the rate at which we are evolving new features, it is becoming very hard to look at survey based mechanisms to collect this information today. Also, you might have heard like there are a lot of like what is called a no code or a low code platform. So in the no code or low code platform, it's very easy for me to migrate my data from one system to another system. I don't need a team actually of engineers who can do this for me. Although the no code and low code systems are very easy, I can just go to a UI and drag and drop data and it gets transferred. They're very hard to govern actually. They're very hard to govern. It's very hard to query them. So this becomes the problem more complex, right? So we talked about some like semi-structured data. So that is kind of, okay, we have some databases, we can write like a SQL query or some other mechanism to query it. We can make some sense out of it. Now think about the other ways we are dealing with unstructured data. So we are collecting data. So I do call a call center, and my chat is being transcribed in some text. It has my personal information. That is one mechanism. I leave my review on, let's say, a website, and somebody is doing sentiment analysis on top of it to make text sense of like what this customer meant, right? Because there are so many of these. Uh, my information could be like, let's say I buy a property, and the real estate department could publish like who bought this house, who owns this. So there's all sorts of information which is publicly available, which somebody can analyze and look at. So the unstructured data is increasing very rapidly, which we can even like not control, and there is no easy way to query this data and make sense out of this, governed and secure. The data diff problem is a little bit bigger with unstructured data because it's coming at multiple dimensions. So that if you look at only two dimensions, one is like the time dimension and another is the space dimension, right? So time is like I'm generating constantly like my IoT events, and I'm constantly getting new kind of data, privacy data or sensitive data with over period of time. And on the space side, I'm constantly adding new items. Let's say I buy a new iPad for my home. So now this iPad is collecting new kind of privacy information, right? So new attributes coming in, and it is doing it over a period of time. So both of the data drift problem has become more complex now. Then we have all these systems. There are a lot of people who are still on paper. We still use a lot of places. The information is in documents. We haven't moved out because of cost and other nature. So there's still a lot of privacy information lying around in documents. And it's very hard to like get out and figure out if somebody says delete my data, how do you figure out in a document or a receipt whose information is what? So this is why the problem is much more complex if you want to figure out somebody's data and use it. So essentially, we talked about the scope of the problem. It's basically two categories: structured data or semi-structured data, and there is unstructured data. For structured data, there is some mechanism you can query it, correlate it, figure out. So it's a little bit easier to deal with. For unstructured data, the problem is more complex because you are looking at different kind of data like text, you're looking at audio, you're looking at documents. And the current system, they give you a very nice PDF, like let's say for your receipts or something, but it's very hard to control what goes into a PDF, how to secure and govern it. So is there some hope, right? So we're going to talk about, I'm going to spend some time on this, how data discovery has been done in the past, and where we are going, what we see now, all right? So most of the system, they have some kind of API. They'll give you the raw data, but it's up to you to figure out what that means. What is privacy? What is privacy data? What is sensitive data? It's up to you to decide, but this is available today. There are a lot of legacy solutions which can query this API, and then you can write custom rules on top of it. And you can say that, hey, this is a credit card number, and yeah, you're good. But if you have a document, let's say the API will give you a document, but it's up to you to figure out what does the document contain, how to parse it and figure it out, right? So this is the most common mechanism. There are solutions who use APIs. You can also use this. You can implement internally these APIs and get the data out. The second common mechanism is more on pattern recognition. So I can write a rule and I can say, if I have a 16-digit number, it's a credit card, or I can do some what is called a distance-based approach, where I say, okay, if you see a 16-digit number and there is a credit card keyword or expiry keyword, then it's a credit card. I'm confident about it. So that is another mechanism. This is already being used by a lot of cybersecurity solutions where they can look, and they're fairly good at it, where I can look at a pattern and figure out this is a social security number and I see these surrounding keywords. So yeah, I am confident that this is sensitive piece of information. Same goes with classification. You can actually look at a piece of email and then you can attach, okay, this is sensitive because it has the word credit card in it. It has some expiry date or the other personal information, or it has address information. So you can do all this. So pattern-based recognition have been there. And it has evolved over a period of time. The problem with pattern-based recognition system is oftentimes these are based on rules. Rules are made by humans, and the rules are as good as the human being who created them. Okay, so the things are pretty evolving pretty fast. So in the privacy world, what is happening is the definition of privacy data and sensitive data is evolving probably like every quarter, I'll say. And what is privacy data today might not be privacy data tomorrow. Like HIPAA has 18 identifiers which are treated as privacy. Tomorrow, if they extend the definition to, let's say, 20, so you have to go in all your system, change the rules, do a rescan and figure it out. So pattern-based systems are okay. They do a reasonably good job. But if you have a lot of data in your unstructured sources, the pattern-based recognition might not work that great. If somebody says delete my data, you might find half of the data deleted and tell the user that it is deleted. Or in case in California, like CIPRA is coming in 2023, where employees can say delete my data, and employee data is very widespread. So in those scenarios, like rule-based system, you might miss some of it. Employee data is very widespread in a company, like you have resumes and then you have contracts signed with them. So it's harder, right? So let's talk about deep learning, which is new. And these are fairly new changes in the AI and ML world, and what this talk is focused upon. So what deep learning involves is it's a specialized kind of machine learning. Typically, when we think about machine learning, it's more about statistical based model, mathematical models. And they have been pretty good. We have matured them over a period of time. They have been used for a lot of the systems before, for anomaly detection to fraud detection, doing recommendation and all that. In 2016, around 17 area, someone discovered what is called an activation function. And activation function were defined in the 80s, but they were hard to implement till 2017. So an activation function is basically, you can think of it as kind of like a gate. Okay, so this gate, when you pass information through it, it can actually decide what information or pattern it wants to remember and whom to give it to it next, right? So it is partially remembering some information, processing it and passing it on. So what activation function did is it made possible that we can learn very complex patterns of information, which is not possible with human mind. And the more data you feed to these systems, the more complex patterns they can learn, and the better you can get closer to like human AI basically. So the deep learning example you typically see in the world today is in your Gmail, right? When you're typing something, it gives you a suggestion, and that is all determined by what you have typed before, right, in your email. So it's learning that over a period of time. So because of the activation function, things change rapidly, especially in the language space. So in the language space, we were able to do translation, like I can translate from English to French. I can do word predictions, like what you're going to type next. Also, another branch of deep learning which changed the game is on the image recognition. So I can feed in a couple of images. I can recognize whether it's a dog or a cat. I can also see, I can also predict like, hey, in this picture, I'm seeing green grass. So I can objectify some of these things. And that made things quite advanced. Like people were able to see what this image meant, and we were able to analyze it a little bit better. These things can be applied to our data classification and data discovery areas also. So I can look at a document. I can see that there is a 16-digit number. I can see surrounding attributes around it. I can remember that pattern. If I see the same pattern multiple times, I know this is a credit card number. I can feed this information. I can also do better judgment around that, hey, there's a credit card number. There is like a financial transaction happening in the document. There's somebody is mentioning a dollar amount. There is some other information correlated to expiry or address, right? So, or there is a receipt mentioned. So I can be much more better identifying based on the context of the data, which was not possible before. And things have changed a lot in the last probably like last 2.5 years. Now we have a deep learning models which can run on your mobile devices. So these models are constantly learning in real time and then accordingly giving you suggestions, and they are used for multiple purposes. Like if one example I'll give is which belongs to what is called federated learning. So when you say okay Google, or when you want to talk to your Alexa, only your voice activates the device, not everybody else's. The reason is because the algorithm is actually looking at the intonations in the voice, and it recognizes this is my speaker whom I need to respond to. So with this, since we can learn very complex patterns, right? It's possible. We can now look across structured data, unstructured data, and semi-structured data and make sense of things like what is my data spread looks like, how is it changing over a period of time. So I can put some privacy related rules, I can get alerted on it. I can put some governance rule around it. So it is possible to get a better picture of my data risk, essentially. Now, the problem with the deep learning, and this is since this is like not this is few years old. So first of all, there are not many companies who do it very well. Most of the biggest like Google, Facebook, they have experts in this. So they have done this quite well because they can spend the amount of resources. It is very hard to create some of these models, so it requires some expertise. They are very difficult to debug. If there is an error or if you have a fault, so it becomes very little bit harder to claim that. Fortunately, a lot of these companies have put their models in public, so you can do what is called a transfer learning on top of their models to do classification and other pieces. But still, like it's limited right now. Things are changing very fast. Now we are having models which are very less compute intensive, and they're cheaper to manage and maintain, but we are still a little bit early. So the point of talking about this is when you look at, if you want to do this on your own, or if you want to look at some solutions, or think about like how can they help you automate some of these things. The mature solution is closer to like deep learning. You might be able to not only look at data today, but tomorrow, because today you are collecting, let's say in your Oracle database, right? But if your company grows and your volume becomes 10x, you want to collect data from other different things. You need to have a better governance and discovery mechanism tomorrow. So the current systems which are there, unfortunately, they don't support these. So you have to augment the current systems with modern AI-based mechanisms as your data evolves. All right. Now, if you want to take two things out of this talk, so these are the two things. One is correlation of a user's data to that particular user is a very hard problem. It's very error prone if you want to do it on a human basis. You will need some mechanism to do this depending on the noisiness of your data. Like let's say you have a chat going on. It has 5 different Johns or Michael in a company. Now, one of the Michael says, delete my data. So whose data are you going to delete? So it's going to be very hard. So correlating our data back to an individual is a harder problem. We will need some assisted mechanisms like deep learning to make it happen. All right. The second thing is the privacy laws are very fuzzy. So Vaibhav talked about like different laws. The privacy laws are still very fuzzy. They keep on changing their mind. Even GDPR, people are fighting, is this useful or not? And even on CCPA, which is the California law, now we have CIPRA, which is going to have a different set of opt-out rules and other mechanisms. So the privacy laws are still very fuzzy. How to implement those? If you have a rule-based manual workflow, it's going to get outdated probably pretty soon, and you have to run again and re-implement. So plan for automation. Plan for automation. So as things change, you can actually evolve. And I will say like there are concepts like which I'm not going to touch on, like privacy by design and everything. My advice would be like, you should look at the data and then have kind of an observer outside which is looking at the data and reacting. Don't try to like get too much married with the data itself, because the privacy laws and the legal laws, the retention laws, they will keep on changing. So unless we have a stability kind of a reference line that this is what you need to treat as PII and sensitive, we need to have a little bit outsider tool which can look at the data and tell you that, hey, this is sensitive. It should be agile and fast enough to react accordingly as the law changes. All right. So these are the 2 things I'll say from the talk if you want to take. And if you have any questions on what kind of data you have, how do you parse it, or if what kind of AI models you want to implement, I'm happy to talk. There is also the talk about how do you share data with your vendors and third parties. So that is an additional topic. During the COVID time, so I think that the rules were relaxed. So the patient data was shared between third-party entities. Now with the COVID relaxing, so those things will come back into picture. And now for research purposes and other details, there's a talk about like synthetic data generation and other areas. Those are a challenge also in itself, like how will you do synthetic data? And there are ways around it, like for privacy, like homomorphic encryption and other areas. Most of them are mathematical models, which we are still evolving. But you need to know where your data is. You can classify it before you go into other areas like privacy by design or synthetic data. So that's my suggestion. And they focus more on automation rather than manual approaches. It will help save cost, money, energy in the long run. All right. Yeah, I think that's all I had. Happy to answer any questions which folks have.
Sounds good. Thanks, Prashant. So let's take a look and see if there are any questions. And I don't see any questions on the Slido and or the YouTube chat. Thank you so much on everything you're talking about. But I just put it out there for a few seconds there. If there are any questions, for those of you watching on YouTube, if you go over to the very top, we've stickied the slider link. Go ahead and click it, and it'll drop in a slide. Do you have any questions for our guests today? Okay. I am still not seeing any questions pop up. Right. So just to wrap things up, thank you so much to both of you for presenting today. We really appreciate the amazing presentation you gave. Just a quick update on the house business. I was just informed that the happy hour is going to be $15 for members, $20 for non-members. All food and drink is covered with your donations, and the happy hour is open to all of those who are fully vaccinated. So you've been warned. Please go get your, at least your 1 jab of Johnson & Johnson or your 2 jabs of Pfizer or Moderna. So you can join us. We'd love to have you. Okay. With that, everyone. Oh, we do have a question here. Let me switch my view. so we actually see it.
So I think it's basically they're asking like, what kind of AI models do you use?
Okay. Yeah. So we use a mix of stats-based model and deep learning models, both for different purposes, because our customers have data across the board, like structured, semi-structured, unstructured. Yeah.
Right. Hope that answers the question to our guest who's wondering what artificial intelligence models are being used. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions. Let's go back and just check the YouTube chat. Nope, nothing on the YouTube chat. All right.
I think one more question has popped up. They're asking, can I contact you guys if you have more questions about automating? Yes, definitely. You can reach out to us at info@security.com, or in case my email is Mehrotra@security.com, but you can send an email to info@security.com and someone will respond.
And it's secuvy.com, right?
Yes.
Very good. All right, everyone. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on our July 2021 virtual chapter meeting. It's been a pleasure to have everyone. Just as a courteous reminder, again, save the date for our next upcoming events that we have here. Our August chapter meeting, which is August 18th, 2021. It will be at 5:30 p.m. And of course, our first in-person event in 18 months. Woo! I can't believe I'm saying that, 18 months. So August 31st at Islands Restaurant in at the Howard Hughes Center in Westchester, at the Islands Restaurant Westchester at the Promenade at Howard Hughes. So with that, everyone, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure and honor to host this meeting with you. We look forward to having Richard back next month. And with that, thank you and good night. If you guys missed this video, please feel free to share it on social media, or you missed a part of it. It's going to be on YouTube within the next couple of hours. But don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for additional future content.